Okay, so the question is, what does the term template hole pattern refer to? What does that mean? Well, the term template hole pattern refers to the exact location of holes for screws in the leaf of a hinge. There are many different types of patterns of holes for hinges. And there is the term template that is used to define one particular type of location or footprint for the holes for the screws. Depending on the size of the hinge, you will have either standardized locations or you'll have others that you have to define. So when we're dealing with a 4.5 by 4.5 inch hinge, those are generally going to always be a template pattern. I can't think of a hinge that would be a full mortise butt style hinge that's not going to be template or the template pattern. So I'm scrolling through a catalog to better illustrate what I'm driving at. The manufacturer is Bomber, and they have their series of LB lube bearing type hinges. Here are some lube bearing hinges that they have. Now, coincidentally, all of the hinges shown here are the template pattern. And what that means is I could pull up a technical drawing, let's use the word template to define technical drawing, and show you the locations of these holes for the hinge. The LB4310 template pattern location for the holes is going to be the same as the 4312, etc. These holes, there are 3 holes in this hinge, which tells me that the hinge is either a 3-inch, but in this case they're 3.5-inch tall. Okay, when you see 4 holes in this half moon style pattern, also template, that will tell you that you're dealing with a hinge larger than 3.5-inch, 4-inch, 4.5-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch. You get into larger hinges, and you are certainly going to be dealing with different screw patterns that do not follow that at all. So, the next page will really illustrate the difference. Now what we see here is a number of hinges that have 4 holes in them. So we know that they're at least 4-inch tall. All of these, or almost all of these, are going to be 4-inch tall. Some of them will be available in a 4.5-inch size, but those will be a template pattern. So the term template pattern is really important to know because in certain hinges, they will not observe the template pattern. Some people will call these a zigzag pattern. If this half moon were to be the template pattern, well, this zigzag pattern, this pattern is different from this zigzag pattern, is different from this zigzag pattern, and this one, and this one. And there could be 15 different patterns of these holes. So the point is when someone is defining the location of the holes on the hinge leaf as the template pattern, well, then we know what we're dealing with. So in a 3.5-inch hinge, we could refer to the document called the template, or we have it called cut sheet here, and that's going to show us the location of the holes for the screws in a 3.5-inch hinge. If your manufacturer uses the term template pattern, I assure you that they will match this exact drawing. Okay? If we were to look at, and that's a 3.5-inch hinge, if we were to look at a 4-inch hinge in a template pattern, that's when we're going to get into a 4-hole hinge leaf. There you go, 4 holes. Any manufacturer who says that their hinge meets a template pattern will follow this standardized templating. Now, why do we have the reason for the template pattern? Well, the reason for the template pattern is going to also be the reason of why finishes would have been standardized on hardware. So what I'm saying is the location of holes and hinges became a standard at some point, and it was because we needed to really tamp down the absolute variety of different holes possible. This is an 8-inch tall hinge. And you can see, well, they sure don't appear to be any sort of half moon or, you know, partial circle pattern. So when you get into the hinges, certainly larger than 5-inch, you'll start to need to look at the location of the holes. Okay? So this is an 8-inch example of something unusual. Now, we're talking about the need to standardize, and the term template was the term applied to the standardization process of locations of holes in hinges. If I were to pull up a manufacturer's catalog, this is a Yale catalog from 1884. Loose joint butt hinges. Okay, so here's an example of a hinge that's available as several sizes: 3.5, 3.5, 4x4, up to 5 tall and 6 wide. And I don't see where they indicate how many holes, but you can definitely tell that this is a zigzag pattern, and this would have been the pattern on a 4.5-inch hinge. Well, the problem is Yale in 1884 had this exact location with the locations measured off the size of the hinge. Well, if I were to further this analysis, and let's say we look at a Corbin catalog from 1885. I pull up my Corbin catalog from 1885, or 1895, I believe. We're going to see hinges that have, you know, unusual screw hole locations. So if we were to look at hinges from someone like Corbin, and I'm scrolling through to find an example of a 4.5-inch hinge, the point of the matter is, and this catalog is 650 pages long, the point of the matter is, yeah, you have some, you know, loose joint butt hinges. 4.5 by 4 is listed here. The issue is, and again, it doesn't tell us how many holes are applied, but the point is if you wanted to purchase hinges from a manufacturer, you could not rely on the uniformity of the locations. Okay, you know, you couldn't rely on Corbin putting their holes in the same location as Yale would. You know, here's a page probably not unlike what we were just looking at. You can get them in 4.5, 4.5. I mean, nothing's to say that this template pattern matches the Yale pattern at all on that page. So a standardization occurred at some point. They called it template. I believe that must have occurred mid-20th century, but it is not unlike the need to standardize finishes. And what I mean by that is, in today's world, you have manufacturers who make a relatively narrow amount of products. Yale will make door closers, exit devices, lock sets, okay? And they generally stick in that area. Well, if you went back to 1884, Yale and Corbin made everything for the home. You could get all of your hardware, your builder's hardware, from a single manufacturer. And they had particular finishes. A number 4 finish from Corbin, natural color on surface and dark brown background. Number 5 is a nickel-plated. Okay, nickel-plated's not a big deal, but number 15, sage green background and natural color on surface. Who knows what that looks like? The point is if you wanted to use locks from Corbin and then hinges from Yale, you could count on the finish not matching. So that same logic is what is applied to standardizing the location of holes for screws and therefore the term template. So template is used to refer to the locations, and if a manufacturer A says it's a template pattern, and manufacturer B says it's a template pattern, for that size hinge, you can guarantee that those are the identical locations. Because in certain hinges, you will have variety. If there are any other questions on the question of what is a template hole pattern, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.